Welcome to this week's Coaching for Self-Belief podcast with Andy and Pete. So, Andy, what have you got for us this week?
Well, Pete, there's something that has happened which is related to the inner game very much in the foundations of the inner game with relation to self one and self two. So obviously we know self one as being that inner critic that we've all got, that one that wants to control what we do and tell us how to do it and what we have done and what we haven't done. And self two is this innate potential for learning that we've all got inside ourselves. And it's often said that children learn better than adults because they tend to use self two more than adults. So what happened this week was I coached a guy who's been coming for a few weeks, and he's a business guy. He plays with a lot of tension when we first start knocking up, but this week he came along and we rallied a whole basket, and I noticed that he was very, very relaxed and he was striking the ball remarkably well, and he was in self too, but he didn't know that. Because there was no trying to control the shots. I could see he wasn't really instructing himself. It was just seemed like to me he was seeing the ball and hitting it. And then we went to the net, and I said to him, if it's okay with you, I'd rather not say anything, but if you want me to say something, I will. And I came out with that because he was in this such a lovely sort of mode of learning where he was playing and he was experiencing these great ground strokes, and that he wasn't really trying to tell himself anything, and he just played really well. But this links with another lesson that happened where this lady came to me, and she was very much in self one. She wanted to know this and that, but she'd been referred to me by somebody else who'd experienced inner game style coaching. So she was open to something, which was a great start. And I asked her what she wanted to work on. So first thing was her volleys. So I said, just show me how you're volleying and then show me what you'd like to do. But she was very tight on the volley, a lot of tension. And I gave her an awareness instruction. I just asked her to notice where did the ball hit on her strings. Could she focus her attention on just noticing where the ball landed on her strings? And she started volleying really well. Nice punch through the shot, and the punch was what she wanted. So she's punching through, she looked relaxed. We go straight to the backhand. I said, what is it on the backhand? Oh, it's not as good as my forehand. Okay, let's have a look. I gave her an instruction to get her out of self one and into self two, which was bounce hit. And all I'd done was check if she was doing bounce hit. And after a while, when she'd relaxed into the exercise and she looked to me like she wasn't trying to control anything, she's striking the ball very well. So she's in self two there. And then we go to the serve. And she'd been having a struggle on the serve. And I said, okay, hit a few. And again, very tight, very tense. Looked like she was trying to control things from self one. So we talked about the serve, and after explaining a few things about the serve, I said, would you like to then look at how much you throw the racket at the ball? Just don't try to throw the racket at the ball. Just notice how much you use a throwing action, and you could scale it out of 10. So she started to do that, and she became an observer of how much she was throwing. She wasn't trying from self one, and she started hitting some fantastic serves, and she said, this is great, I haven't served like this. Anyway, she'd been in self two the whole lesson, like the guy with me at the beginning of the lesson. She said to me the following week, after your lesson, she said, I couldn't wait to try it out, and I went over to another court, and she said, I couldn't do it, it was terrible. And it turns out that she was trying to do all of these things. So we had a conversation around what self two and self one is. But I think the point that I would like to sort of make here is that even when people, and we help people into self two, because we know that that's where the real rich stuff happens, the natural learning, etc. um, that very quickly, because of years and years of conditioning and training themselves to learn in a way that is different to this way, people go back into self-one, and they want to know how they did it, and they want to control what they're doing. So it is a choice. Do you want to be in self-two or self-one? And it's not an easy choice to make for people, to give up the feeling that they're controlling things. And I remember Tim Galway telling me about a swimmer who'd knocked off some 2 seconds off their time over a period of a year, which was a fantastic effort. But the swimmer was depressed because they didn't feel they'd done it. They felt their body had done it. And this is the choice that people have to make. And self-one is really, it's not really interested in the results. It's interested in taking control. So as coaches, our job is if we can help people into self-two, this natural way of learning, this is good. But we also have to perhaps give some information about this idea too, because and explain what can happen, because then it allows people to just think about that for a bit as well, and perhaps to be aware of when they do switch back into self-one.
It's certainly one side of it, isn't it? To be explicit about the theory of interference and focused attention, and that when you have relaxed, focused attention, then in a way you're delegating to self too.
Yeah.
I always think that's a nice way of looking at it, and that self-one, the part of us that wants to actively control, has a job to do, which then makes it feel more comfortable with the whole process. And you can be explicit about that as well, and say, well, you know, your conscious self has a job to observe what's going on.
Yes, so self-one does have a role. So self-one
has a role, and then it doesn't feel left out.
Absolutely.
So
but it's the role, isn't it? It's the role that it has.
It's so to be clear about what that role is, and as a starting point, maybe that's all it ever needs to do, is to step back and observe, so that it gives high quality, relevant information to the onboard computer, which is one way of looking at self too.
Yeah, absolutely. So we could still look at it as like the bridge. You know, the accuracy of your observation by using self-one. So, for example, if you want to choose where you notice where the ball lands on your strings, it's that accuracy of your observation which is the bridge into self-two. So we do need self-one, but we have to let go of it when we're actually performing the action.
Yes.
And we become an observer.
Yeah.
And I think what happens is that the mind quickly takes control again when people go back to perhaps trying to practice it on their own. But sometimes as coaches, we don't always pick it up. I don't always pick it up, but I'm aware of it a little bit more now and how it plays out in terms of physical tension and furrowed brows and trying too hard.
And how it can come in through the back door, can't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Someone might have a good experience of quietening their mind and being focused, and then things start to flow beautifully. And then 5 minutes later, they're trying to recapture that. And so self-one is connected with that trying mode and trying to recapture and the over-control.
Yeah, control, yeah, great. So I suppose if we do a quick wrap up here, I would say for us as coaches, it's recognizing when our players are in self-two. It's helping them to go into self-two through perhaps increasing awareness of what they're already doing in order to quieten their minds down. And it's maybe giving a bit of information to our clients too, that there is a trap. That you because you've been so used to learning by giving yourself instructions about, and the body's been receiving those instructions for years and years. Now you're becoming an observer of what you're doing, And so there's a slight, that's what you're looking out for.
I think that's very helpful for people to have that information. Yeah, for
Mm,
sure.
mm,
And then you can see then they go into an exercise and they say, "Oh yeah, I get it. I was trying to control that too much," or
yeah,
yes, I found my mind was quietening down and I was just observing, and that felt really simple and it was working.
yeah, absolutely. So it's awareness of awareness, maybe.
Yes, yeah. So be explicit about the information you give them, and so they understand how this all kind of fits together, how it all works,
Yeah,
um, and also to give a job to the conscious mind, that it has a
absolutely.
role to
Yeah,
play,
yeah,
and that's the role of observer, and that self too, the onboard computer, you can delegate to let that sort out some of the details for you, and
yeah,
that's kind of how the system can work really well.
yeah. So I think it's over to self too. And good luck with what happens on the call and off the call.
Very good. Have
Thank you
some
very
fun with
much.
that then, and see you next time. Thanks for watching.